Hi, I'm Nate Heasley, and in addition to being a social entrepreneur and technology consultant to technology companies, I also run this organization called Goodnikels. And that organization is designed to help other people start nonprofit and social impact organizations. Among the other things that happen on a regular basis, I get a lot of emails from people who are looking to start nonprofit organizations or social impact organizations. And a couple of these emails recently started me thinking over the last year. One of the first emails that I got this year was from a person in Indonesia who was looking to start a coffee collective, a women's coffee collective. And they were looking for help in building a website and looking to retail their product around the world to their supporters and other people who were interested in sustainable farming and creating a women's collective coffee farm. So when they wrote to me, I got really excited because I thought this was a great project. I would love to help out with this. And so immediately I started looking for resources and ways of connecting them to the people who could help them build this website. Another email that I got was from a person in New York, somebody who was a friend of a friend, and that person was looking to start an arts organization. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'll help. But it wasn't really as exciting to me. And I did what I needed to do and help them find the resources they need. But at the end of the day, it wasn't really what was exciting to me. And it's not because I hate the arts. I mean, I don't want to be, I love music and I love, painting and all of those things. But for me, that's not what gets me out of bed in the morning. I was much more interested in issues of women's empowerment, of sustainable farming, and about coffee, honestly, because I love coffee, So that's really what spoke to me. So then the contrast of these two emails got me thinking, why is it that I am more interested in helping somebody halfway around the world and in Indonesia than I am somebody who's in New York, somebody who I'm closer to both in terms of physical location and also through in a strict sense 6 degrees of separation kind of effect. Why would I care to help one over the other? And it got me thinking about why do we help the people that we help? How do we choose those folks and what decisions do we make around that? And how do we help, more importantly, how do we help other people find the people that they want to help more, that they're more connected to in other ways? And how do we use that sort of platform to create more community, create more helping in the world, and hopefully close the gap, the social distance gap, and create community wealth in the process. So that's really where this project was coming from. So let's back up a little bit and talk about social distance. So this is very fitting, given that we were just watching monkeys work and trade their rocks for grapes. Social distance is the theory that the people that we're connected to, the people we're most likely to work with, to share with, to trade with, and what kind of exchange rate we give those people is based on how far we are from them. And traditionally, this is about locality, or it's about genealogy. It's about if you've got a loaf of bread, you'll share it with your neighbor, but you sell it to somebody who lives across town. If you've got a loaf of bread, you'd rather share it with your sister than your second cousin twice removed who you've never met, right? But what's interesting about this social distance theory is that, as you can see, traditionally this is based around your home or your lineage, your village, your tribe. And in the modern age, we don't have these things, or these things have been sort of displaced somewhat through our connections that we make with other people. And we now form our tribes, as Seth Godin points out, we form our tribes not based on who we live near. Especially in a city like New York, you're much more likely to know somebody who lives across town than you are to know your neighbor, because your tribe is built around your experiences, where you went to school, where you work, what you do for a living, what your interests are, what your ideology is. And so because of that, we're much more likely to do our sharing at a favorable exchange rate with people who are in our modern tribes, in our Seth Godin tribes, if you will. And so what this has done is really redefine what it means to have a social distance, or to narrow the social distance gap. How do we find the people that we want to help, narrowing that social distance gap by defining our tribes? So how does this create wealth? well, let's talk about sort of fundamentals of economics, right? So creation of wealth happens when someone takes an underutilized resource and adds value to it. They work with it in some way. And then once they've got that resource that they've developed, they can share it, they can gift it to a friend, they can trade it with somebody else. If that person values it more, then that person gets a better value for that work. And the very process of engaging in this interaction is what creates wealth. And then that wealth is built within that community. And these days, those kinds of activities are more digital, right? They're more about working with our brains than they're working with our hands, working with our mind and not our brawn. And so what we create by working with the bits and bytes is much more likely to be graphic design or website development or account management or something that we can do remotely. And because of that, not only are we able to create these products more easily and create wealth more easily, we're also able to share it more easily because these products can be shared or these skills can be shared around the world. And I can work for the company that's in or farming collective in Indonesia just as easily as I can work with somebody who lives next door to me. And this is making this easier to create wealth and to share it is really what's given rise to this idea of the sharing economy. So the sharing economy has gotten a lot of attention recently, and there's a lot of people involved in the sharing economy and creating companies around the sharing economy. People who are looking to use underutilized resources like their apartment, a car, a bicycle, an office space, or even their time. And they figure out ways of using this time and sharing it with a larger population and thereby creating wealth out of this underutilized resource. These businesses are great in a lot of ways. They do create wealth. They generate connections that are useful in a lot of ways. But there's something that's fundamentally wrong with the sharing economy as it stands today. The fundamental problem is that it's not really about sharing. It's not about community. It's not about values. It's about selling. And because it's about selling, it's not just, it doesn't create the social wealth that we're looking to create. When it comes right down to it, if I hire a car through Uber, I don't care whether the driver is a Democrat or a Republican. I just want them to get me there, right? And I don't care if the person who rents my house through Airbnb is an environmentalist or an oil tycoon, because as long as they don't spill wine on my carpet, I'm going to be happy, right? I'm just getting money from it. That's got some benefits, but it's also got some detriments. Because there's no thought about the community or the values of the people that you're trading with, what you're actually doing is detrimental to creating social wealth. And the reason for that is because what you're doing is allowing the currency, the economy, to flow in the direction of people who don't share your values. Wealth goes from the people who are people you would support, so people, if you're an environmentalist, goes to the pockets of people who are oil executives. And that flow creates a trade deficit with the people that we actually share values with in favor of the people that we don't share values with. And in addition to the problem with that trade deficit, there's also a problem of the transactional costs, right? So the real companies that are getting rich within the sharing economy are Uber and Airbnb. And so that's a wasted value, a lost transaction cost within the social wealth. So sharing is great because it creates wealth, but it's really who we share with and how we share with them that really matters, and that's the key to creating social wealth. Social wealth is really about creating a value to a community through social sharing. And it's not just the sharing of that resource or the hard value of that resource that we care about, it's also the building of the connection, right? The way that by trading with somebody or bartering with somebody, you bring those parties closer together, especially if you're doing it around shared values. And so what we're looking to do is reinforce those bonds rather than break those bonds or not recognize those bonds. And through that, create a stronger community and create social wealth. The more that the social wealth is created, the more that the social distance gap is reduced. So we can actually close the social distance gap by trading around our values. So how do we create social wealth? We do it by defining our tribes We define our tribes by the people who share our values and our ideologies, and we work with them to create a closed system so that when we do sharing within that, it reinforces that community rather than going outside of it. The closed system encourages trading within the tribe as opposed to trading outside of the tribe. And by generating that currency within the tribe, it circulates within the tribe and creates a trade surplus so that wealth comes in or is generated internally, but is more reluctant to leave that tribe. So why not use cash, right? Cash is good. Everybody likes cash. The problem is cash is that cash is not, it moves too freely, right? It's fungible and lacks any sort of morality or value to it, except for the dollar value that's associated with it. It doesn't work within a community. So what about Bitcoin or Dogecoin or one of the other 6,000 different alternative currencies that are gaining popularity these days? The problem is that those are cash equivalents, right? So there's an exchange rate. How many Bitcoins are worth how many dollars? And so at the end of the day, it's really just cash. And cash is not a community currency unless you consider it the community currency of Harvard alumni who really benefit from that relationship, right? So is it possible to create, a great model for working within a closed system is the company store. And you'll probably remember from history classes back in grade school or middle school, learning about the company store. The idea behind the company store was a company like a lumber mill or a mining company or a mill would create a company store that would sell goods. And then they would pay their workers in a coin or a scrip that could only be used at that store. And so everything that the person earned within their employment at the lumber mill would have to be spent at the company store. And this was great for generating wealth. The problem was that it was generating wealth for the company, not the worker, right? So is it possible to use a closed system for good instead of evil? The system of dollars benefiting certain wealthy people, or the problem of company coin benefiting people who are the company owners as opposed to the actual workers. Well, there are a lot of examples of alternative currencies that actually benefit communities. Ithaca Hours is one in upstate New York. There's Berkshires, which is in Massachusetts. They're dotted all over the country and all over the world. Kenya has the Eco Pesa and Britain has the Lose Pound, just to name a few. There are thousands of them. Some of these are cash equivalents. Some of them can be exchanged for dollars. Some of them are only tradable for hours. So an hour's worth of time with one person is worth an hour's worth of time for another person, and there's no set cash value. These are great because they create a regional value, a community based on the currency that is exchanged within that area. And that reinforces the regional economy. The problem is that, again, most of these currencies don't actually work around values, right? So just because you live in the same town or just because you live in the same state as somebody doesn't mean you actually share their values, nor is it something that you would necessarily want to support them just because they happen to live near you. So these community currencies, those alternative currencies, are often designed around localities instead of around tribes as we think of them today. And they don't really enhance the tribes that we're talking about. So the solution is an alternative currency based on values. Something that's not related to your genealogy or geography, but something specific to your ideology. My project, which is called Goodnikels, is designed to do just that. The idea behind Goodnikels is that it's a time-based alternative currency that allows people to barter their skills with other people who they share the same values with. And these professional services are exchanged within the system built around the tribes and communities that they define for themselves. So if they decide that they want to create a tribe based on their co-working space or an alumni network or their affinity group based on their gender or their race or their political views, they can do that. And they can decide to trade only within those groups, or they can trade in a broader group of people who are both part of their alumni network and part of their affinity group. And the whole thing, the whole vision here is that this is all facilitated with an alternative currency. The alternative currency of a good nickel is allows for those transactions and those barters to happen without direct bartering, so that people can work with one person and earn good nickels, and then go and use those good nickels to hire somebody else, perhaps in a different affinity group. But the point is that each one of those transactions is facilitated with that alternative currency so that everything is kept even and is all accounted for. The other thing that the system does is that it allows for people to identify people, because an important part of our community is what causes we support. And so using the cause-based interaction, allowing people to find other people who are interested in working in the environment or in politics or in poverty or education. Those are important ways that we define our community, and that's why the system is designed to allow for those kinds of interactions. You can even find people who are interested in the arts and work with them, but again, that's not my thing. But the whole idea of a good nickel is that it's both a physical and a virtual currency. So we have these physical currencies that allow for people to both trade in person and then also trade online using the alternative currency as a fiat for that exchange. The good nickel itself is designed around, as I said, a time-based alternative currency. So that means that 10 good nickels equals an hour, or 1 good nickel equals a tenth of an hour. And that was really designed specifically because I wanted it to reflect what I consider the oldest form of alternative currency, which is beer. So 1 good nickel is equivalent to roughly 1 beer. And the next time somebody does you a favor, and normally you might say, hey, I owe you a beer, man. Now you can send them a good nickel. So that's the idea behind that. So how did these good nickels get started, right? Where do they come from in the first place? Well, once again, to reinforce this idea that we're basing an alternative currency on an ideology rather than a geography or a genealogy, the good nickels come specifically out of service to a social impact organization. So what we've done is create a bank, essentially, that gives grants and loans to nonprofit organizations that need specific kinds of professional help. So when a nonprofit comes to us and says, hey, we really want to get a project started, we need a website, we need a new logo, we need help with our marketing, we can give them a grant or a loan, and then they can use that grant to hire the professionals that they need to complete their service project. And once those good nickels are in circulation, everybody who is earning good nickels is doing it because they've done some good deed for a nonprofit organization at some time. And then once that person earns good nickels, they can then spend those good nickels with other people, knowing that the transaction is happening within the same tribe, within the same ideology. These are people who also have agreed to accept good nickels because they believe that service to nonprofits is important. And that's really the origin of how that system comes together. So using a closed system of the alternative currency designed specifically around tribes and ideologies is really about creating a community that reinforces that shared value, that reduces the social distance gap and builds social wealth within our tribes. And that's really what I hope to do with this Good Nickels project, and I hope that you'll join me. And if you're interested in coming up and getting some good nickels later on, come give me a holler. All right, thank you.